Welcome to The Thriving Mama, the podcast that teaches you not just how to survive, but to thrive in motherhood. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Davis. We're constantly being told that procrastination is a bad thing. And when I'm working with moms, this is something we dive into deeply. We do this because procrastination can be both positive and negative. The key is finding out all of the whys. So many moons ago, my husband and I opened up a brick and mortar practice right after we graduated. We both loved seeing patients, but there were many tasks that I would procrastinate on frequently, which would cause friction between the two of us, which obviously, if you're working together and living together, is bueno. It caused a lot of issues in our relationship. And I really hated doing insurance calls and a lot of the tedious admin work. And so did he. And we couldn't really come to a resolution on it for a long time until I had, a lot of moments of self-reflection. And I realized that my procrastination was avoidance of difficult conversations. But the key was why? Why did I avoid difficult conversations? And at that time in my life, I know it was the fact that I really didn't have the confidence to stand up for myself and say what I thought and use my voice and say what I truly believed. That was a big issue. And, thankfully I've resolved that now. But a lot of it comes down to, those limiting beliefs that we've talked about in many previous episodes. We'll talk more about this in a minute. In this episode, we'll discuss 6 reasons why procrastination can work against us, what productive procrastination is, and 3 big ways procrastination can actually be your best friend. Want to chat and get more personalized support? I'm offering podcast listeners a free 20-minute Thriving Mama check-in where we'll evaluate your physical, mental, and emotional health and provide useful resources to help you on your journey. You'll find that link in the show notes. Often when I'm working with moms, the issue of time comes up, and it's mostly lack of it. But when we dig in, I often discover lots of it is rooted in procrastination and not necessarily using time as efficiently as we can. But why are we procrastinating? At its root, procrastination is actually emotional and not a time management issue, as most people think. We tend to procrastinate to avoid something that makes us feel uncomfortable in some way. But behind it is often limiting beliefs that I spoke about this earlier. We've talked about this in several earlier episodes because limiting beliefs are one of the biggest things that holds us back in our lives and prevents us from moving forward and doing things that we want to do and need to do and know we should do. So it's really important to get a handle on those limiting beliefs. The example that I mentioned in the intro was due to my mindset of being a people pleaser and a perfectionist and the belief of not being good enough, which resulted in less self-confidence. So I didn't want to go back at the insurance companies when they said to us, oh, we're not going to pay for this, or we're not going to, give this patient, visits to your office. So I would just, either try to avoid it or else I would be like, okay, I wouldn't stand up for myself. And so thankfully, I have reversed that, but that can cause a lot of issues in your daily life. These false, deeply rooted beliefs about our abilities and our own securities can get in the way of our productivity, as can perfectionism, fear of failure, low self-esteem, fear of criticism, things like that. And also conditions such as ADD, ADHD, OCD, and anxiety. Those can also be big contributors to procrastination and need to be addressed. From a health standpoint, there's many ways you can address those things, anywhere from lifestyle to diet to supplementation or even medication when necessary. So there are lots of reasons that procrastination happens. And the one thing that procrastination actually does is it gives us a temporary relief from something we find uncomfortable. But afterwards, after that avoidance and that temporary relief, you'll likely experience feelings of self-blame and shame and more anxiety, which compound those negative feelings you already had around what you're avoiding in the first place. So that's not necessarily beneficial or productive. And if you keep avoiding it, the negative feelings will keep multiplying, making it harder for you to overcome that belief and start doing whatever it is that you've been avoiding. Procrastination can keep us stuck in cycles, and repeat cycles and also limiting beliefs. So that's where it can be negative and hold us back. But what if procrastination was actually beneficial? And there's actually quite a bit of research on this, highlighting the positives of procrastination. So I'm going to highlight some of these so that you can see where procrastination can actually be beneficial in your life. One of the first points would be it gives you time to contemplate ideas and plans. And this is a big one because sometimes when somebody gives you a task, you're excited to do it, or maybe you're not. But if you're excited to do it, you might have like all of these ideas. And then when you sit down to actually do it, you're feeling a little paralyzed. So that's when procrastination is coming in and serving you well, because it's giving you time to kind of flesh out those ideas and give you the opportunity to plan rather than just jumping right in. So that's a one way where procrastination can be positive. Another one is where it can help you increase creativity and innovation. So during that time when you're, not doing what you think you're supposed to be doing, you might have some, flashes of creativity or innovation. So a lot of times our brain can work in certain ways. So when you walk away from or avoid something that you're, like I said before, quote unquote, supposed to be doing, this gives your brain the opportunity to kind of think about it, we'll say offline rather than being actively engaged. And many times when we're doing this, that's when creativity strikes. You might actually have some brilliant idea to solve a problem or a really innovative way to address something. And that's great because that's, your brain is actually working for you, even when you're not actively thinking about it. So that's when I'm talking to moms who work or especially own their own businesses, that's something we talk about. Sometimes that when you're avoiding something, it's your brain saying, hey, give me the space to allow for creativity and innovation. And oftentimes these are where moments of brilliance come from. So in this way, procrastination can also be very beneficial. And the last way that I wanted to discuss is some people just work better under pressure. And I can say I am one of those. If you give me 2 weeks to complete a project that might take, we'll say 8 to 10 hours, more than likely, I'm going to be waiting till the last probably 3 days, maybe not 2 days, but I'll be waiting for the last 3 days probably to complete it because I know personally my genetics, and I also know that the way that my brain works. And when I am under the gun and under a deadline, I work really well and work efficiently, and my brain fires on all cylinders. And some people are wired this way. Literally, they're genetically wired this way. There are other people, though, that are not. And so they need to take all of that time. So understanding how you work is actually really important too. So lots of times, even though I know I have something I need to do, I might prioritize other tasks ahead of something that's due in a couple of days, because I know that if I do those other tasks, I'm still getting work done. But that other task that might be a little bit more important, I might be able to be more productive and work better under that pressure. So that's the last key. You might just work better under pressure and you're not truly procrastinating. So there are many, many ways that procrastination can work for you. The keys with procrastination, though, are understanding why you're doing it. If you understand why you're procrastinating, that will help you uncover many things. We could, like we said before, is it a positive reason you're procrastinating? Or is there something that's underlying that you need to possibly resolve? And so here are some of what we look for when I'm working with people and we're trying to identify the whys of procrastination. Is it overwhelming? That's a big one. I'd say it's probably the most common thing that moms I work with experience on a daily basis is overwhelmed because they already have so many things on their plate. So if it's overwhelming, we've got some options. You can break it down into smaller tasks that seem less overwhelming. You can delegate it, or you could also you could find somebody else to do that task for you. So when I'm saying delegating, I'm often telling people, like for instance, in your household, you can have your kids, help you out with chores. Or if you own your own company, you might have an employee do something for you, right? You might have them do your social media. So that's delegation where you're still overseeing it. You can also have somebody else do it completely, and that would be outsourcing. So if you have the ability to outsource things and completely take it off your plate, for instance, like that social media, you could have somebody in-house do social media, but you might still have to review it. If you are outsourcing it, most of the time you have some contact with those people, but you are, completely handing off the reins to somebody else. Those are some of the options to take the overwhelm out of the picture. Another key to understanding why you might be procrastinating is it a boring task? If it's boring, you can find a way to make it more interesting to you, something like gamifying it or looking at it from a different angle, or again, delegating. Delegating is a great way to help move things forward, especially if it's something you don't want to do. Another big one is fear of perfectionism or fear of failure or perfectionism. Getting to the root cause of this is one of the big things. And this is where where we were talking about before, those limiting beliefs. Most of the time, perfectionism or fear of failure harkens back to worthiness. So it's usually worthiness of love and acceptance, because when you're trying to be perfect, you're always trying to prove that you're worthy, or you're trying to be accepted by somebody else. So that's one of those things where if it is a fear of failure or perfectionism, you really want to find out the why. The next one is it urgent? If it's not urgent, like I said before, you might work better under pressure. So procrastinating in that case is positive for you. If it's not urgent and you don't work well under pressure, then that might be one of those things, again, trying to go deeper into the why of why you're not doing it. Similarly, health issues. This is a big one, and this is one that people often don't really think about. A lot of the women that I work with are, often very, like I said, stressed out, overwhelmed, often very anxious. This, from a physiological standpoint, often ends up in lack of energy, brain fog, where your brain is just not firing on all cylinders, fatigue, poor sleep, hormone imbalances, brain chemical or neurotransmitter imbalances. And, many of us have been there before, and that's okay. If you're avoiding something because you feel like your brain is just not working well, or you don't have the energy to do it, that's okay, but you really should figure out the why. Why is this happening for you? And I basically said some of the reasons why a lot of times that, lack of energy and fatigue come from poor sleep or, hormone imbalances or nutrient imbalances. So figuring out the why behind those types of issues for procrastination is really, really important. And I also just wanted to note, like the anxiety, the ADD, the OCD, those also would fall into that health category. And I would highly encourage you to find out, the reasons why you are experiencing that. And because, like I said before, those have a lot of remedies. There are remedies for those. We can, do nutrient testing. We can do hormone and neurotransmitter testing. There are lots of ways that we can address ADD and OCD and anxiety too. And so I highly encourage you, if the health issue is one of the reasons you're procrastinating, to address it, because that would be really, really helpful and beneficial. Sometimes people are amazed that sometimes little lifestyle changes like, sleeping, getting consistent sleep, or getting out in the sun every day at certain times, or even changes in their diet or taking certain nutrients can really turn things around and make your brain feel like it's firing on all cylinders, and it can be really consistent. So, like I said, if you are chronically procrastinating, you might want to evaluate, these reasons that we mentioned and consider the whys. But another simple tip I give people is to evaluate your time. And one way to evaluate your time is either take out a piece of paper or use your phone and write down, from the moment you get up to the moment you go to bed, what are you doing every day? Catalog all of that. And you can quickly find out the places where you're efficiently using your time and where you are procrastinating. And that will help you uncover the whys. And another little tip on there would be, if you do find that you are procrastinating, I would journal on it and think about it a little bit, because then you can really start to uncover some of the whys. I also wanted to give you a note on productive procrastination. And what I, catalog or categorize productive procrastination as, it's a place filler. So let me give you an example. Lots of times I know when I'm trying to avoid doing a task that I don't want to do, most of the time, either because I find it tedious or boring or uninspired, I will go do other things. And in my household, that usually looks like walking into my kitchen and like cleaning up the counters and doing some dishes, or folding some laundry, or vacuuming, because I work from home and that's what's around me. And in my brain, I consider that getting something done, even though I'm not doing what I, quote unquote, should be doing. Right. And so it is technically a place filler. And yes, you are doing something that is technically productive, but is it, moving you towards your goal or what you're supposed to be doing in the day? And so that's another thing that, like, when you're evaluating your time, that's something to look at. Are you using productive procrastination or place fillers? Because oftentimes those are other areas where we can be helped out. Like my kids help with the laundry, and my kids are supposed to be doing the dishes. And sometimes, like most moms, I'll get irritated and just go do things sometimes when they're supposed to do it, just because I don't want to see it, in my face or in my space. So that's a little note that I like to give people on, is like, look for those areas of productive procrastination. So how can we overcome procrastination? There are many ways, but I'm going to highlight 4 for you. The first one is to complete that time exercise that I mentioned above and identify where you're procrastinating and why. The second one is to create a plan and share it with others for accountability. Not everyone works well with a to-do list. And I am totally on board with that. I used to create long ones. I don't do that anymore. Now what I'll do is each day I kind of have 2 main big tasks that I want to complete. And I might break that down into like little steps. And lots of times I will share that with either my assistant or other people, that I'm responsible to, just so that I have accountability, because I know myself and I work way better when there is accountability. And that, I would say, is also true for 90% of the moms that I work with. That was one of the probably the primary reason I created the Thriving Mama program, was because the moms who I worked with that I had, close contact with, and we really crafted a, very tailored program for them. They're the ones who did better. And it was because of accountability. There were check-ins, there are frequent touch points. And when we're accountable to others, we often will follow through and, versus being accountable to ourselves. Number 3 is ask for help if you need it. And this asking for help can take form in many different ways. it could be an accountability partner. And that's kind of what I mentioned above, but also it could be anybody. In my program, when we have multiple moms starting at the same time, I often tell them to pair up and, have somebody, check in with you every day or every other day as an accountability partner. Or if you're going to the gym, find an accountability partner there, or whatever your goal is. Try to find somebody who you really connect with and jive with, and, have that person be your, kind of like your rock, and have that person be, your sounding board and keep you on track. And also, I'd like to note, just make sure it's somebody, like I said, that you really connect with. I would not make it, like, if you're married, I wouldn't make it your spouse. I would make it somebody out, preferably outside of your family that often, that has the same goals as you. That often works the best. I've seen where people pick an accountability partner in their family, immediate family, and it backfires. If your sibling lives across the country and understands you, they might be a good one, but don't pick somebody who's like in your immediate household. I would say that tends not to always work out the best. It may, everybody's different, but in my experience from what I've seen, it does not always work out the best. You could also have a coach. And this is kind of the realm that I work with people in, but there are all different kinds of coach. There's business coaches and marketing coaches and, fitness coaches and life coaches. There's people who coach people on all sorts of things now. And I am a big fan for a couple of reasons. And I use coaches in my life to this day. The accountability, I think, is significant. It also takes the responsibility away from you for doing all of the planning and the guidance and everything else. You're a participant. You're not the person who has to think through everything. And the coach is also there to help you navigate challenges and, like I said, be your guide. And so that can be really, really helpful and critical. And then the last thing, asking for help is, again, if you're at home, can you ask your children or your spouse or whoever else lives with you for help with household tasks? Do you have friends that you can, can they help you pick up the kids from school, for instance? If you need something from the store, can somebody run and grab that for you? There are lots of ways in our lives that we can ask for help, and we often don't do that. The last way I'm going to mention to overcome procrastination is to identify your limiting beliefs and mindset. And there are several ways you can do this. First, I usually encourage people to journal. And, sometimes when you're writing things out, it becomes very obvious what some of our limiting beliefs might be and some of our, mindsets that might not be serving us very well. Or work with the professionals. There are many different kinds of professionals that do this. And like I said, that's one of the main things that we do in my program. But working with a professional, somebody who's trained to see these things, can also be very helpful and just make it a much faster process. And they can help you reverse those limiting beliefs and change them into something that's beneficial and serves you. And one thing that's important to note is sometimes a limiting belief it can be easy to change just by doing like a simple shifting of the, how you frame things. But most of the time, limiting beliefs are very deep rooted, and they're rooted in emotions and feelings and trauma. And so that's when you might want to work with a professional to help you reverse that. And a story I hear quite a bit from the people that I work with is, I tried to either do a DIY program or, I was using affirmations or I was journaling and I just couldn't overcome, XYZ limiting belief myself. And so that's where, working with somebody can be very helpful. So in conclusion, I want to leave you with this. Procrastination can be your best friend if you understand why you do it and use it to your advantage. It also gives you the opportunity to identify and change limiting beliefs so you can lead a more fulfilling and happy and procrastination-free life. If you made it this far, I truly appreciate you. Remember, knowledge is just the beginning. Taking action is what truly sparks change. If you're overwhelmed and don't have enough energy to make it through the day, I invite you to book a free 20-minute coaching call with me. It's a no-obligation chat where we can discuss your health goals and how I might be able to help you achieve them. Visit the link in the episode description to book that call. Until next time, keep striving for wellness, and remember, you have the power to not just survive, but thrive in motherhood.